Fair use.
1854 and 1929, nearly 250,000 orphaned children were resettled under what came to be known as the Orphan Train. A man that went by the name Charles Loring Brace was the first Freemason in charge of the Orphan Train movement in the USA. After the reset, many cities were completely empty. These cities were actually found by Masons first. They organized the World Fairs, which seemed like camps since everyone had a passport number and they would hold it up like an inmate. However, they repopulated these empty cities with children and families from around the world from 1854 to 1929. This operation took children from their parents from several countries and many states here in the USA. These children were stolen and bought and sold into slavery. What better way to repopulate these empty cities and indoctrinate these children? And while researching this topic, it dawned on me, doesn't Disney always have motherless children or there's orphans? So I decided to look into it. 56 of 140 animated feature films distributed by Disney since 1937 have characters who are orphans or has a missing or single parent or their parents were killed. We know why Disney keeps killing parents, and the predictive programming always goes pretty deep. And at the same time of the whole orphan train operation, we see that there were many insane asylums, and that's where they put possibly their parents, all the woke people, people that were red-pilled and wouldn't go along with the programming. That's why they got treatments and lobotomies.
So, listening to some of these stuff about the orphan trains, right? It was an Alex Will video that he did with Brother Joe, where they were going over the information and breaking everything down to a simple term. Something dawned on me the way Joe and Lex were speaking, that this reminded me of Pinocchio, right? The story of Pinocchio. The whole idea that he wanted to be a real boy, right? That part really doesn't play into this. The part where he and the other boys were being kidnapped under the ideas that they're going to a land without rules, without restrictions, without parents, anything like that, right? To live free and live however they wanted, And when they got there, yeah, they got the taste of enjoyment at first, and then after that, what? Cruel hardship, a lot of hard work, right? They were turned into an ass, the beast of burden, and then I thought it was interesting. While this is going on, Lex has broken down Nineveh and the whale in New York City, and I was thinking, hey, isn't that crazy? When he finally, repented and seen his ways and seen that, he wanted to live within, a structured society, and he tries to go back home, what happens? He ends up getting swallowed by a whale, and I just thought that was all very interesting, and it's all tied in together, with this. And I found her video because I went to look to see if Disney, talks about Pinocchio being an orphan train, and they don't. But I see it that way. And then I found something interesting. I was looking at the lyrics to the song, right? And it's just this part right here. Hi-ho, the Mario. And I thought, oh man, ain't that interesting? What does hi-ho mean? Because we see that this whole thing in, the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right? They sing their whole hi-ho. And I'm like, what does that mean? What is it? What does that mean? Is it Latin? What is that? So watch this. Let's see. So I had to fool around with this because I tried to think of the accent they were using in Pinocchio, right? And then the story where it was originated, I thought maybe Spain, maybe it's Spanish. And I couldn't get anything, But when I switched it over to, I got, there it is. Now, hi ho, Mario. Mario was supposed to be, was supposed to be smiling, laughing, laughing at me. But in Spanish, I believe it's smiling. Let's see. No, it's still laughing. Let's see if we can let me see if I can Google it, right? I can't find how I found that it meant laughing. So we'll move on. I'm gonna just put a note, a pin in that. If I find it, I'll bring it up again. But we got the name. When you look up the name on She Knows, it says in Italian the name means. No, it says, see, they switched it. They keep doing that. I keep looking up at the E, but they keep putting an A in there. But this is what I thought of when I thought of, this is gonna lead to the goddess of the sea, right? But they say Mario is a bitter name. It means bitter. In Latin, baby names, the meaning of the name Mario is hammer. Mars, the god of war. Also one of the number of masculine variants of Mary that can be attributed to the Virgin Mary. And we know Mary is Venus, right? In Spanish, baby name meaning, the baby names, the meaning of the name Mario is warring. In America, baby name of the name Mario is bitter. So, and I did a video on this where we found that if we keep digging into the name Mario on other sources, it's going to take us to a Hindu goddess that was the goddess of the sea. But that's another video. We'll have to go back into if we want to look at that further. So back to this. We've seen that it was, what was it, over there. Let me see if we can just pull up the whole thing. Translate the whole word. No, don't want that. Let's see if we can take out the. So let's just take out the beginning. So this is, there it is, laughing at me. Now, so where'd he go to? A land where he thought he was gonna have fun and having pleasure? Or it could be the fact that they're talking about him being a puppet. So, but I wanted to look into the Catalan people, because I thought it was interesting that, when I was trying to figure out what language it would translate from and give me something besides the English translation, that's what came up. So here we go.
Catalans, Catalan, French and Occitan, Catalans, Spanish, Catalanes, Italian, Catalani, Sardinian, Catalanos, are a Romance ethnic group, 10, 11, 12, native to Catalonia, who speak Catalan. 13. The current official category of Catalans is that of the citizens of Catalonia, an autonomous community in Spain. 14. And the inhabitants of the Roussillon historical region in southern France. Today the Pyrenees Orientales Department. 15. Also called Northern Catalonia. 16, 17, 18, and Pays Catalan in French. 19, 20, 21, 22.
So here we have Catalan news, right? Okay, so let's just get right into this, because I thought this was pretty interesting. Look.
Catalonia has a long history of trade, going from the ancient Greeks and the Romans to nowadays. While the former used to sail around the Mediterranean, some of the most important merchants traveled to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean in the late 18th century and the 19th century. Indians were people who traveled to the Americas, or West Indies, and returned to Catalonia older, and with a big fortune. They are also known as Indianos in Spanish, or Americanos, but there is no English translation of the word. If you want to learn more about the Indians, check out the Filling the Sink podcast episode on Indians and Havaners.
And there's a podcast down there, but we're not going to do that. I don't want to get too... It's going to be down here. Because I think we stumbled across some people who we've been overlooking.
This is a curious phenomenon, as India, or Americano, are concepts that only exist in the languages of the Iberian Peninsula. Martín Rodrigo, a contemporary history professor at the Pompeu Fabra University, told Catalan News. They are called Indians, as they used to travel to what they considered the Americas or the West Indies. Despite the fact that Indians are closer in time to our generation than Christopher Columbus's discovery of the New World in 1492, they kept calling themselves those who went to the West Indies. Although the continent was named America in 1507.
Because I can't help but think about how you have the stories of Crying Eyes Cody, right? A Sicilian that passed as a Native American. You know stories of Sicilians in Louisiana being hung right there along with, you know, black folks, melanated people, Afro people during the Red Summers. You know, I had a woman that who, you know, in all appearances looks Caucasian, you know, or whatever that may be today's standards, and she's from Louisiana, and she was telling me how her uncle, her great uncle on her mother's side, was hung, and she was never explained why, but she was told that it was because he was Sicilian, and that her family is not supposed to, at the time, they were not supposed to reveal that they were Sicilian. She explained how, you know, he got hung when the blacks were being hung. So I've always tried to, you know, be able to figure that out. Why can Sicilians pass as Native Americans, and why were they hanging Sicilians along with, you know, melanated people? And you know, Lex set me straight on that whole Sicilian thing, being, you know, of our people, of the Afro people, right? That it's not that. Because I'll never forget, man, one night we were talking and he pointed it out. He's like, you ever see these Sicilians having mulatto looking children? Nah, they all still come out with distinct phenotypes. So somebody went into the islands of Sicilia who had jet black hair, you know, and had melanin to them, you know, like the Hindus, you know. What was his name? The character that plays Dwight on The Office. He read from that dictionary that the Hindus were once lived in the Caucasus Mountains and were kicked out. Where did they go? You know, and I'm not saying they are the fathers of them, but I'm saying, you know, they have naturally jet black hair, you know, out of the people we look at. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Let's see here.
These Catalan merchants tended to set sail when they were young and poor and go to the Americas, especially to Cuba and Puerto Rico, in search of new job opportunities. They did not only come from Catalonia, but also from other parts of Spain such as Cantabria, Andalusia, or the Basque Country. The Catalonia of the late 18th and early 19th centuries would not have been possible without the wealth the Indians brought from overseas. Even, I dare to say, modernism would not exist without this money. Anna Castelvi, coordinator of the Xarxa of Indian municipalities, told Catalan News in the seaside town of Bogor, on the Costa Brava.
Now we should look at that. We should look that up. This Anna Castelvi, however you pronounce that, the coordinator of the Extor, of Indian, however you pronounce that. We should look that up just to see what that's really all about, because I've never heard of that before, and obviously I can't even pronounce it. Jeez.
Bogor, full of big houses with grandiose courtyards overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, is one of Catalonia's most famous Indians towns. Bogor was a town of 2,000 inhabitants. Of these, 500 young people left for the Americas, Castelvi explained. Modernism or Catalan modernism is a unique Art Nouveau architecture style, exemplified by Antoni Gaudí and others. Indians were some of the main patrons behind this movement, as they lived in magnificent houses designed by some of the best artists of the time. These were built long before the Indians returned home, as they had assistants in Catalonia taking care of their estates and preparing for their arrival.
You can't help but ask this. Where is this in the history books? You're telling me that the Indians were doing trade with these people in Spain, right? And we're financing sending people back to the Americas. Oh man! Only this time, man. Only this time we find this out. Only these days we find this out, right? That's crazy. That it's just written here in 2002.
What are the defining characteristics of an Indian house? A porch to give off colonial airs. A porch that featured paintings of their adventures. Always landscapes where you can see the sea, Castelvi told Catalan News. Catalan architect Antoni Gaudí was really lucky to find an Indian like UCB Goul. His father, Joan Goul, was a major figure in the Industrial Revolution in Catalonia. His son inherited his fortune and became the main patron of Antoni Gaudí's La Pedrera and Parc Goul. His patron gave him the freedom to express his artistic desire with the trencadisses and these curved forms in La Pedrera, the Xarxa de Municipis Indians coordinator said.
Listen to that. That's crazy. The Indians live out high and fancy, man. This is like the missing parts, to the history, Oh, man. That's crazy. Oh, we're going to get to Picardia, man. That should be interesting.
Back from their journey abroad, if successful, Indians continued investing in farms, factories, and other industries in Catalonia. Barcelona was one of their most popular destinations. Indians used to mainly return to Barcelona, as they wanted to invest their earnings and do business. And Barcelona was the only Catalan city that allowed them to do so, Pompeu Fabra University contemporary history professor Martín Rodrigo said. They also traded new products that did not exist in Catalonia before, such as coffee, rum, and tobacco, as well as cotton, ceramics, and several other products.
See, now this is making sense why that in that book, what it say, that book, Egypt in America, right? This makes sense why when it said that in the beginning chapters that the N words, right? The N words in Mexico, because I don't like saying the word even if I know the definition. But they said that it's those specific, because remember they were being specific. They said that the Aztecs were yellow people, right? And they started listing all these, and they start telling you there's a Mongoloid people here who now live in the areas where the original Mayans were, right? So they were very specific, and they tell you that the Inwards were running plantations in Mexico, and they were filthy rich. They had to spend that. They had to trade that day. Their plantation, whatever the plantation was producing, they had to be able to sell that to somebody for them to be rich. Man, look at that.
New traditions, when returning, changed the social habits of Catalans with activities such as enjoying a chat after having lunch, the sobretaula, while drinking some alcohol. In fact, Bacardi rum was founded in Cuba by Facund Bacardi, a Catalan who was born in the seaside town of Sitges. This tradition of coffee, alcoholic drink, and cigars came with the Indians, as we did not have coffee, rum, or tobacco here, Anna Castelvi pointed out. Slavery Indians did not only trade with cocoa, sugar, or tobacco, however.
Now think about it. What did Pinocchio smoke when he got there, right? When he got to the land of whatever it was called? He huffing down cigars. Man, I wasn't man. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy. This missing history right here, all because we looked into the orphan trains. Look at this.
Between 1821 and 1867, almost 600,000 captive Africans were brought to Cuba. It is quite a significant number, so we can imagine there were around 1,500 boats, each one with its captain and crew, Martín Rodrigo said. 1821 was a key date because that is when Spain abolished the slave trade. However, it had been allowed since 1789, and slave labor was allowed in peninsular Spain, the Balearic and Canary Islands until 1837, in the colony of Puerto Rico until 1873, and in colonial Cuba until 1886. While the slave trade was not invented by the Indians, many clearly benefited from it.
See, that's what I was just saying. They were financing sending these people back to the Americas. Oh boy. I'm not laughing for the hardship. I'm laughing because this was here and this is never spoken about. If we wanted to pull them in court, they gotta show us the records and they gotta show us where they're drawing this from, right? That's crazy. It's here and it was, oh man.
Some Indians were slaveholders, such as some businessmen from Barcelona and textile manufacturers from Manresa, Castelvi said, adding, however, that not all Indians were slave traders and not all slave traders were Indians. Antonio Lopez, also known as Marqués de Comillas, was one of the Indians who became enriched by the slave trade. Up until very recently, the square at the end of Barcelona's Via Laietana, near the old port, was known as Antonio Lopez Plaza, but has since been renamed after the grandiose post office building.
Now, Missy, now I wonder if there's a connection to Fort Antonio, right? That's not what I want. So, just bear with me. We're getting to the end of this, of what we're going to use from this. All right, so.
There were 5 different parts of the slave trade. First, Africans were captured by other Africans and held captive before being brought to sites on the coast where ship captains would buy them captive Africans in Africa. After sailing across the Atlantic, slave traders awaited the ships in Cuba, and then farm or factory owners would buy them as slaves for labor on sugar cane plantations, cotton plantations, or factories. As slavery was abolished in other countries before Spain, foreign ships would sometimes intercept Spanish boats and free the captives.
Because there's 2 things that go through your mind right there, right? How come so many of these photos from that time showed the Irish, or the people we call Irish, working these slave plantations in these places in the West Indies. You know, and then you read these, these articles about how there was more whites on the plantations in the West Indies than there were. I'll see if we can find some of these so we can, I can verify it. That there was more whites on these plantations in the West Indies, than there were Africans. And then you think about it, right? What's the story of Jamestown, Virginia? Is that a ship leaving Mexico was intercepted, right, by an English ship that took 20 Africans from their boats and brought them to Virginia, and they were the first Africans brought to Virginia. But they don't tell you the description of the people. Like, it's just assumed that we're thinking Africans are people that they tell us who they are today, when we know the etymology of the word African was first used to describe whites living in Africa, and later became contrasted, con, to the American-born Negro. And I think we're gonna stop here. I'll leave the article in the description, but I think we hit something. We should look into this.
The impact of Indians is still felt across the country in the form of old houses and festivities celebrating their legacy. But more recently, social movements have begun to reconsider the history of the most prominent entrepreneurs in Catalonia, especially given their links to slavery.
Yeah, we'll end it there, but I think this is good to go back and look up, what was this? We need to look up that place where they talked about all this wealth was being held, and the tributes back to, from the Indians back to Spain. I mean, from Spain back to the Americas. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the other way around. Where is it? The coordinator we're looking for. Where was it? Shoot. I'm not seeing it, and I know I'm probably overlooking it. There it is, right there. You need to look this up. And see where it's gonna take us. Yeah, see where it takes us. But we'll probably turn this into another movie. Or, I'm sorry, movie, wow. Another video. Oh, man. Yeah, I'll put this in the description box, so if we want to look ahead, just in case they decide to change something up. Because I can imagine they would, just to stay out in front. So, alright. Alright, so last thing, check this out. I told you I'd find it. So I'm listening to this book, and I couldn't remember what section because I just kept going. I didn't take notes. Here it is. All right, so around the 6-minute mark, they're gonna start explaining the difference between the different tribes here in New York, right, and in Ohio, and in Pennsylvania, and these people that were traveling down I can't think of their names, but they were traveling down the St. Lawrence River, and what they claim they encountered, okay? Because I said before that they knew there was a difference of people here, right? And listen to this. And it should remind you of was it James Smith and the Lost Boys? Remember, they painted themselves charcoal black, dressed in Indian garments, and then ran on and raided the English. And it was all to get the English to be upset with the British for selling guns to the Indians, and to get the British to turn on the Indians. And remember, was it the Chesapeake Bay, not Chesapeake, I'm sorry, the Boston was it the Boston Tea Party? Remember, we found that they were painting themselves jet black and doing blackface to throw the tea overboard while wearing Indian stuff. And you gotta ask yourself, why would they do that? If they were mimicking Indians, why didn't they paint themselves red? Right? So here we go.
Which occupied the Niagara Peninsula. These Indians were among the most ferocious in North America, so that they were left in peace between the Iroquois and the more peaceful tribes to the west and north. Brebeuf visited 18 of their towns and was in danger of his life wherever he went. Only fear of the French kept the neutrals from destroying him. "Go out and leave our country," said an old chief, "or we will put you into the kettle and make a feast of you." And another, "I have had enough of the dark-coloured flesh of our enemies. I wish to know the taste of white meat, and I will eat yours." After a terrible experience...
Hear that? We've had enough of the dark-colored flesh of our enemies. Right? Now we want to taste the white. And then, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we'll do this again, because this is going to lead into what I found about Eskimos. Oh, Eskimos and Inuits. Okay?